I was only a few hours into Metroid Dread and I had an overwhelming urge to write something. Just put words down on this game and start to shape my thoughts on it a little bit. Nintendo's return to one of their most beloved franchises, one that has largely helped define an entire genre of video games, already feels like a masterclass despite having only spent around 2 to 3 hours in the game itself. So in this Smoke and Mirrors, I'm going to leave some early impressions on Metroid Dread and what I've enjoyed about it thus far. I'm going to try and keep this as clear of spoilers as I can, given others may well be waiting to grab their copy. Dread is technically the culmination of a long-running narrative, effectively the first sequel in the franchise since 2002's Metroid Fusion, a game I fondly remember playing on a Game Boy Advance SP while at college in the United States. It's made all the more interesting in that it's developed by Nintendo alongside Mercury Steam, who previously worked on the Castlevania Lords of Shadow games, a series that I thought started really well and slowly dropped off a cliff, and more recently the Metroid 2 remake for 3DS in 2017. Samus Aran finds herself on the planet of ZDR and facing off against a variety of delightful creatures, but most critically, the extraplanetary multiform mobile identifier or EMMI robots. These machines are sent down onto the planet before you get there, but something has clearly gone wrong and they are now hunting you down. The game starts quite different from a lot of Metroid titles in that you start under the planet's surface rather than atop it. So many Metroid games, be it the original series or even the Metroid Prime games, have you land on the planet and slowly work your way in. Here, it feels like Metroid has taken inspiration from many of the games that have derived from it, such as say Hollow Knight and Ori and the Blind Forest, by having the player start deep in the world and then force them to find their way back out. What this results in is a wonderful opening hour of level design. Metroid Dread feels fast and slick. Samus moves at a breakneck pace, and given the inverted nature of the environment, rather than falling down into the planet, the player needs to learn quickly how to jump, wall jump and slide through a variety of non-linear spaces as you climb back out of the hole you've found yourself in. The world is littered with small but clever silent tutorials teaching you core mechanics, as well as managing your expectations. You meet unopenable doors early on, but within the hour you'll access your first key that enables you to crack these open. But what's so satisfying in the opening map of Kataris is that it works to introduce these elements to you early on and returns you to them when ready, but often without much signposting. The map is fundamentally a large circle, in that you will return to and revisit whole segments once again, now with the right tool for the job. I started noticing this not long in as I saw how the level design guides you in specific directions as you go through each area. It feels quite natural to follow and creates a feel-good vibe of the game as it aligns with your own perceptions. I forced myself once or twice to stop and perhaps second guess where I needed to go, only to discover what is, for now, a dead end. But it was a dead end that I would be guided back to an hour later with the right tool for the job. It's interesting how little signposting and explicit tutorialization there is, and the game instead relies on the player's intelligence and synergy with the game's level design to follow it through. This alignment has kept with me all the way through until the second main area of the game, but of course the game is quick to point out in the map about the amount of exploration you've achieved and the items still to be collected. Now surrounding all of this is the EMMIs. The EMMIs are practically invincible, and the one time the game turns on its head and is forcing you to be evasive rather than standing your ground. They are an exciting type of non-player character you often don't see in a Nintendo game. They're smart, too smart even, and are very good at hunting you down. Their lithe movement as they climb up and around level structures is really eye-catching, and from the very beginning, the game clearly communicates how much of a threat they are to you. While the EMMIs can move around quite freely from room to room in the map, they are also trapped within a segmented area, so it's a fixed region of the map. Hence, as you're moving towards the next objective, you will then bump into the EMMI once more. What was even more interesting again, thinking about this, was how that was fitted into the aforementioned level design flow. The EMMI map segments are built to force you into specific areas, but also become a mechanism to test the player's grasp of the platforming mechanics very early on. So you don't have that luxury of second guessing the level design as the enemies force you to make that decision quickly. These encounters continue to evolve as new mechanics are introduced, and I'm keen to follow this up at a later date with a longer discussion, but need to finish the whole game first for sure. One last thing I want to make mention of is the art style. I have to admit that when the first trailers popped all the way through to launch, I have not been convinced by the look of this game. It felt flat and often a little rough around the edges. Even now, showing this footage, I think it doesn't always land. This is in large part given I started playing the game docked so I could record footage of it. The overall environment design is quite pretty, but it looked a little better in motion, proving not to be as distracting as it was before, but ultimately the game felt a little too low poly at times and the textures lacking depth. I'm not one for complaining about graphics often in games as it isn't that important to me, but it stuck out to me this time around. And then I undocked the Switch and everything made sense. The low poly, clean texture approach visually pops in handheld mode. Running on that small 720p screen, the game looks crisp, readable, and is so damn smooth to play. It's the first time that distinction between the two console modes has really stuck out to me for a first-party title, as often Nintendo find a way to make their art style look great in either format, but it's clear their focus has been on ensuring the handheld experience is paramount. And with that, I'll wrap up the Smoke and Mirrors video and I can get back to playing a little more of Metroid Dread. I'm farther along than what you see in this footage and there's already a bunch of stuff I could have talked about some more, but wanted to keep it relatively spoiler free for you. Take it easy folks, and I'll be back.